Welcome to Nikki's Nightmares, where chilling tales come to life. In today's terrifying story, we descend into America's most haunted ghost towns, abandoned places where booming dreams collapsed into silence and where echoes of the past refuse to fade. From lawless mining settlements soaked in violence to forgotten towns swallowed by disaster and tragedy, these desolate streets still whisper with unseen footsteps, lingering shadows, and something that may never have truly left. What remains isn't just history. It's something watching, waiting, hidden within the ruins of lives that ended without warning. If you love scary stories, paranormal encounters, and true horror experiences, you're in the right place. Make sure to like, subscribe, and join me as we delve into the deep, dark, and the mysterious. Out across the empty stretches of land, far from the noise of modern life, there are places where time didn't just pass, it stopped. They call them ghost towns, but that name doesn't quite capture what they really are. Because these places aren't just abandoned, they feel left behind. Ghost towns were once alive, built quickly, often recklessly, by people chasing something just out of reach: gold in the mountains, silver beneath the earth, or the promise of a railroad line that would bring prosperity overnight. From the late 1800s into the early 1900s, towns rose from nothing in a matter of months. Wooden buildings went up, streets filled with voices, businesses opened, lives were built. And then something shifted. The mines ran dry, the rails moved on, crops failed, or the land itself turned against the people who tried to claim it. Floods swallowed homes, drought cracked the earth, and in the Great Plains, the Dust Bowl didn't just choke the sky, it erased entire communities. One by one, people packed what they could carry and left. Some towns emptied slowly, like a fading heartbeat. Others were abandoned almost overnight. If you walk through one of these places today, you'll notice something unsettling almost immediately. The buildings are still there, weathered, collapsing, barely holding on, but standing. Old saloons with broken glass, homes with doors hanging open, schools where silence presses in from every direction. And sometimes the details remain: a chair still pushed in at a table, a child's toy left behind, clothing folded neatly in a drawer, as if someone meant to come back, but they never did. Most ghost towns are found in the American West, scattered across California, Nevada, Texas, and Colorado, though others stretch into the forgotten farming communities of the Great Plains. Each one tells the same story in a different voice: a rise built on hope, and a fall shaped by loss. Some were destroyed by economics, others by something far more violent. Because not all ghost towns faded quietly, many were born in chaos. Mining towns in particular were known for speed, desperation, and conflict. Fortunes were made overnight and lost just as quickly. Disputes turned into gunfights. Accidents underground claimed lives without warning. Entire communities learned to live with death as a constant presence. In places like Mogollon, New Mexico, stories linger of sudden violence, of men who never made it out of the mines, and others who fell in the streets. Their names may be forgotten, but something else remains. Then there are the towns marked by tragedy. In New Mexico, the land around Dawson still carries the weight of mining disasters, explosions that took dozens of lives in an instant, entire families shattered, entire communities left grieving. It's said that even now, the silence there doesn't feel empty. It feels watched. And then there are the towns that were simply abandoned too quickly. Places like Bodie, California, where buildings still hold the belongings of those who left in a hurry. Dishes sit untouched, beds remain made. It creates the illusion that life could return at any moment, that someone might walk back through the door and pick up exactly where they left off. But no one does. There's something about isolation that changes the way we experience these places. The wind moves differently through broken structures. It whistles through empty windows, rattles loose boards, and creates sounds that don't quite have an explanation. Floors creak under weight that isn't there. Doors shift when no one is near them. Your mind tries to rationalize it, but your instincts tell you something else. Some locations carry stories older than the towns themselves, land tied to conflict, to loss, to legends passed down long before any building stood there. In parts of Arizona, there are places whispered about, caves and hidden spaces connected to brutal histories, to curses, to warnings that were never meant to be ignored. Whether those stories are true or something we've created to explain the feeling, does it really matter? Because when you stand in a ghost town, completely alone, surrounded by the remains of lives that ended without closure, it doesn't feel like history. It feels like something unfinished. These places are often called time capsules, preserved fragments of the past, offering a glimpse into what once was. Historians study them, tourists visit them, some are even restored, brought back to life as cultural or artistic hubs, like Madrid, New Mexico. But even in those revived spaces, the past doesn't disappear. It lingers, in the walls, in the silence, in the spaces between what we can explain and what we can't. Because ghost towns aren't just empty places, they're echoes of ambition, of tragedy, of lives interrupted. And sometimes, if you listen closely enough, it almost sounds like those echoes are listening back. The haunting of St. Elmo. Tonight, we travel deep into the mountains, to a place where history hasn't just been abandoned. It's been left behind to rot in silence, a place where the past doesn't stay buried, and where something still walks the empty streets after dark. The town is St. Elmo, perched high in the Colorado mountains at nearly 10,000 feet. St. Elmo is often described as the best preserved ghost town in the state. But preservation comes at a cost, because while the buildings remain, so do the stories, and some say, so do the people. The drive into St. Elmo is deceptively peaceful. Winding roads, dense forests, and open skies stretch out before you. It feels quiet, almost welcoming. But the moment you arrive, something shifts. The air feels heavier. The silence feels unnatural, as if the town is watching, waiting. Once this was a booming mining town. Established in 1880 during the gold and silver rush, St. Elmo exploded with life almost overnight. In just 10 days, the population surged to nearly 2,000 people. Miners, outlaws, families, all drawn by the promise of fortune buried beneath the mountains. At its peak, the town was alive with saloons, hotels, a schoolhouse, and the constant noise of industry. But like so many boomtowns, the prosperity didn't last. When the mines began to fail, the people followed. The Mary Murphy mine, the town's most profitable lifeline, continued operating until 1922. But when the railroad was abandoned, that was the end. One by one, the doors closed, the streets emptied, and St. Elmo was left behind. Now, it stands frozen in time. Poplar Street still stretches through the heart of the town. The buildings still stand, weathered but intact. The general store, the Home Comfort Hotel, their lace curtains still hang in the windows, unmoving. But there's something unsettling about those windows. something that makes you feel like you're not alone, because according to those who've visited, you might not be. The most well-known spirit tied to St. Elmo is Annabel Stark, better known as Dirty Annie. Annabel's story begins with her parents, Anton and Anna Stark, who arrived in town in 1881. Her father worked in the mines, while her mother ran the Home Comfort Hotel and the general store. Anna was known to be harsh, controlling, keeping her children isolated from the rest of the town. Annabel grew up under that strict rule. But after her mother's death, everything changed. She inherited the hotel alongside her brother, but instead of maintaining it, the place fell into decay. And so did Annabel. The once well-kept woman began wandering the streets in filthy clothes, her hair tangled and wild. The townspeople gave her a name, Dirty Annie. But there was something else about her. She carried a shotgun, always, slung over her shoulder as she patrolled the streets, watching, guarding, protecting what remained of the town. And even after her death, many believe she never stopped. Visitors have reported seeing a woman roaming the streets at night, a figure in the distance, moving slowly through the shadows, always watching, always present, as if she's still protecting St. Elmo from something or someone. But Dirty Annie isn't the only presence tied to this place. Not long after her death, the Home Comfort Hotel was passed down to a family friend. One day, the grandchildren were playing inside the building when suddenly everything changed. Without warning, every door in the room slammed shut. The temperature dropped sharply, nearly 20 degrees in an instant. The air turned cold, suffocating. The children began to scream, trapped inside as the room seemed to close in around them. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The temperature returned to normal. The doors slowly creaked open, as if whatever had trapped them had decided to let them go. And then there's the story from the 1970s. A skier was passing through the town at dusk, gliding down Poplar Street as the light began to fade. That's when she saw it. A woman, standing in the second-story window of the Home Comfort Hotel. She was dressed in a long white gown, completely still, staring outward with an intense, unblinking gaze. The skier froze. She knew the owner was out of town. No one was supposed to be inside. As she followed the woman's line of sight, she noticed a group of snowmobilers approaching, something strictly forbidden in the area. After warning them and watching them leave, she turned back toward the hotel. The woman was still there, watching, then, slowly, the figure lowered her head, gave a small, deliberate nod, and vanished. The next day, the skier returned with the owner. Together, they searched the entire building. Every door was locked, every window sealed. There was no sign that anyone had been there at all. Today, St. Elmo remains partially inhabited, with a few caretakers maintaining the town. The general store still opens during the summer months, welcoming curious visitors who come to see what remains of a once thriving community. But those who linger too long, those who walk the streets when the light begins to fade, often leave with more than just photographs. They leave with a feeling that they were watched, followed, or perhaps warned, because in St. Elmo, the past isn't gone, it's waiting. And somewhere, in the silence of that forgotten town, Dirty Annie is still walking. Cahawba, Alabama's most haunted ghost town. Tucked away at the meeting point of the Alabama and Cahawba rivers, Cahawba was once a thriving heart of wealth and ambition. It stood proudly as Alabama's first capital, a booming river town fueled by cotton and commerce. But beneath its early promise something darker was already taking shape. The land itself was unstable, prone to relentless flooding, swallowing roads and buildings in rising water. By 1826, the capital was moved to Tuscaloosa, and many of Cahawba's wealthiest residents quietly abandoned it. What remained was a town slowly unraveling, caught between prosperity and decay. Then came the Civil War. Cahawba's purpose shifted from wealth to suffering. A factory in town was converted into a prison for Union soldiers, where thousands were held in harsh, unforgiving conditions. When the war ended, the town briefly found life again as freed slaves settled the land, rebuilding what they could from the ruins left behind. But it didn't last. By the 1890s, Cahawba was gone, not destroyed in a single moment, but emptied, left behind to rot in silence. And in that silence, something remained. Visitors who walk the abandoned streets today often describe an unsettling feeling, as if the town is still aware of their presence. The air feels heavier, sounds carry strangely, and sometimes there are voices, soft, faint, just beyond understanding. Nowhere is this more disturbing than the cemeteries. The new cemetery, in particular, has become known for its unnerving activity. Groundskeepers have reported hearing whispers spoken directly to them, even when no one else is nearby. School groups visiting the site have captured strange, disembodied sounds while recording the area. Photographs often reveal shadows or lights that weren't visible at the time they were taken. And then there are the figures, not quite solid, not quite gone, shapes that move where nothing should. But the most famous presence in Cahawba does not hide in shadow. It glows. The legend of Pegasus' ghost has haunted this town for over a century. It is said to appear as a floating, luminous orb, drifting through the place where Colonel C.C. Pegues once lived. The colonel, a respected figure and leader of Alabama's 5th Rifle Regiment, was killed in battle. And not long after his death, the light appeared. In 1862, a young couple walking near the cedar garden maze of his home encountered it for the first time. A pale orb hovered silently ahead of them, pulsing faintly in the darkness. When they reached out to touch it, it vanished into the foliage, but only for a moment. It returned, gliding beside them as they walked, watching, following, waiting. To this day, visitors claim the light still appears, drifting through the same space, as if tied to something that never truly left. Many compare it to a will-o'-the-wisp, but others believe it is something far more personal, a presence bound to memory and unfinished business. Beyond the glowing orb, Cahawba's hauntings take many forms. There are reports of phantom footsteps echoing along empty paths, the faint rustling of dresses brushing through unseen figures, and shadowy silhouettes wandering the ruins long after sunset. In the old slave burial grounds, where many graves remain unmarked, visitors speak of apparitions rising between the trees, as if the past itself is trying to be seen again. Even the statues are not untouched. One figure, known as the Weeping Angel, is said to shed tears in the dead of night, mourning a town that once thrived and everything that was lost with it. And somewhere among the graves, a spectral woman is said to wander endlessly, searching for a love she never found again. Cahawba is no longer a city. It is not even a ruin in the traditional sense. It is something else entirely. A place where history, tragedy, and something unexplainable have fused together. An archaeological site by day, and something far more unsettling by night. Because in Cahawba, the past does not rest. It lingers in the trees, in the cemeteries, in the silence between footsteps, and sometimes it watches back. Bannack's ghosts are still watching. When most people imagine a ghost town, what they're really picturing is Bannack, Montana. A scattering of weathered buildings clinging to a single dusty road, sagging porches that creak even when the wind is still, and windows so dark they feel less like glass and more like eyes. From a distance, Bannack appears abandoned, preserved, frozen in time, but those who have walked its empty streets often leave with a very different feeling, because in Bannack, the silence doesn't feel empty, it feels occupied. Bannack was born in 1862 when gold was discovered deep in the Montana hills. Practically overnight, it transformed into a booming frontier town swelling to thousands of hopeful miners chasing fortune. For a brief moment in time, Bannack even served as the capital of the Montana Territory, a place full of promise, opportunity, and something far darker lurking just beneath the surface. Because while gold poured in, so did violence. At the center of it all was Henry Plummer, the town's sheriff, a man meant to bring order who instead became the architect of chaos. Under his watch, stagecoach robberies surged, gold shipments vanished, and travelers disappeared along the trails leading out of town. Then came the truth. In the winter of 1864, a captured outlaw confessed that Plummer himself was leading the criminal network. The man tasked with protecting Bannack had been preying on it. Justice was swift and merciless. Plummer and his deputies were dragged to the gallows and hanged without trial, and some believe he never truly left. Today, Bannack stands preserved as a state park, its buildings restored just enough to withstand time, but not enough to erase it. Visitors come seeking history, but many leave with stories they can't explain. The heart of those stories centers around the looming structure of Hotel Meade. People claim they've seen figures watching from its upper windows, unmoving silhouettes that vanish the moment you look too closely. Inside, the air grows unnaturally cold in certain rooms, as if something unseen is standing just inches away, breathing beside you. And then there's the child. Her name is Dorothy Dunn. She was the daughter of the hotel's manager, a young girl who drowned in 1916. But according to countless visitors, Dorothy still wanders the halls of the Hotel Meade, often seen wearing a blue dress, sometimes peering out from behind dusty glass, sometimes speaking softly to children who pass through the building. The unsettling part isn't just that she appears, it's that she interacts. But the hauntings don't stop there. In the old general store, shadow figures slip between shelves that haven't been touched in decades. Cameras capture shapes that shouldn't exist, while whispers echo through the room, too faint to understand, but too clear to ignore. Some say these voices belong to the same outlaws who once terrorized Bannack, men who were executed but never truly silenced. Elsewhere in town, the Beset house carries a different kind of sorrow. Once used as a quarantine for sick children during epidemic outbreaks, it became a place where many young lives quietly ended. Now, visitors report hearing the sound of crying babies, faint, distant, as if echoing from another time. Photographs taken inside often reveal strange anomalies, blurred figures, small shapes that shouldn't be there, and sometimes laughter, soft, childlike, coming from rooms that are completely empty. Even beyond these buildings, Bannack itself feels restless. Doors swing open without warning, then slam shut as if something unseen has decided you've gone far enough. Footsteps echo along the wooden walkways, but when you turn to look, There's no one there, and on rare occasions, visitors claim to see a lone figure walking the streets, a man, watching, patrolling, the unmistakable presence of Henry Plummer, still keeping watch over a town he once controlled in life, and perhaps refuses to leave in death. Bannack was never meant to last. Like many boom towns, it burned bright, then faded just as quickly. By the mid-20th century, it was nearly empty, its final resident leaving behind a place suspended between past and present. But maybe that's the problem, because in Bannack, the past never fully moved on. It lingers in the buildings, in the silence, in the spaces between footsteps, and for those who visit, there's always that quiet, creeping realization that you may have arrived alone, but you were never truly by yourself. The story ends here, but the terror does not. Join me again, like, comment, and subscribe if you dare.